Ed Blakely. Ed, good morning.
Well, I hope there's a good morning someplace in the world with this pandemic going on. It might be sunny in places and rainy in others, but the pandemic is everywhere and hurting every economy in the world. Worse since any war I can imagine.
Well, deaths in the States could top over 100,000, but the government's coronavirus task force is winding down and states are in the process of reopening. Ed, what's the latest?
Well, the very latest is that Trump's decided not to wind down his task force. I think there was a lot of pushback from industry on that, a lot from his own party, and a lot from the medical community. So it's not going to be wound back, but he's clearly very uncomfortable because he has no good news to report and he has nothing he can really do at this point. The states are opening up because they're trying to manage the crisis rather than die in the crisis, both politically and economically.
Again, to reiterate, most countries now considering reopening have this virus well under control. The states might have a downward trend in cases, but there's still an awful lot of sick people. What measures are going to stop this from flaring into a second wave, and are they being properly implemented?
No, 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 no. None of this is being done. I think a few states like Massachusetts and California and perhaps New York have real programs. Others are just hoping, hanging on by their teeth. It's going to be a very hard fall. And I think we will have a flare up. Fortunately, summer's on the way. And during the summer period, the disease spread hopefully will slacken because the disease itself, if people sneeze and the like, it's caught in the air. The high temperature will knock it down, but an awful lot of people are going to get sick.
Stimulus. Trump's next plan for rescuing the economy is a payroll tax for workers, but the suggestion has few fans in Congress, even Republicans seeing this as ineffective, not really even a half measure. They're focused more on liability protections for businesses, protecting business owners from lawsuits if their workers do contract coronavirus. Any thoughts on this one, Ed?
Well, I don't think, lawyers are pretty clever people. And whatever law they come up with is not going to protect the workers or the business owners very much. If the United States had a health program that wasn't in shambles, broken, and impossible, sure. But this will be a fig leaf over a very exposed body. It won't work.
Democrats are instead pushing for a $2 trillion rescue package with a broad ranging focus on housing, social services, food security, the postal service, rent and mortgage relief, amongst other things, as well as another round of stimulus checks to Americans and extensions of unemployment insurance. Look, it sounds good. It also sounds very expensive.
It's the Green New Deal, isn't it? It's finally coming in, and it's coming in out of a disaster. Um, I hope the printing presses can print that much money. Certainly not going to be paid back. This is the worst debt since World War II, and it'll take a very sound recovery to remove that debt. The United States had Europe on its knees and needing the U.S. economy to recover. So it did recover. And then the European economies recovered. This time, everybody's on their knees. How they're going to get up is very uncertain. This is probably a very useful package. Will it be enough? No. The only thing that will be enough is a vaccine, and it has to come quickly.
And one of those numbers that really underlines something you were actually saying about the job losses early on, that they weren't real jobs in the sense that they weren't jobs that were paying livable wages. Reportedly, half of US workers now on unemployment are earning more through it than they did working. That can't be good for getting the country moving again.
No, it isn't. Uh, that's not to say that workers won't go back to work. They will. But fortunately, I'm assuming, and I hear scuttlebutt, a lot are taking advantage of education online and otherwise, so they're prepared to do other things and have more secure employment or more possibilities in the future. So that unemployment insurance, the California model, as we call it, pays for people to retrain themselves and gives them additional benefits for that. This could be actually a boon for the entire nation.
On food security, COVID is biting in two different ways. There's struggles to find migrant workers for farming as picking comes around. That's in part due to Trump's own moves on immigration. And we've also seen over 10,000 cases in the States linked to the meatpacking industry. But Trump is looking to the Defense Production Act to classify meat processing as critical infrastructure and keep plants open to prevent a shortage of the likes of chicken, pork, other meat on supermarket shelves. Thoughts on this one, Ed?
Become a vegetarian right now. Buy beans. Uh, I wouldn't eat any meat from a producer in the United States unless it was my own production on my own home and on my own farm. I think the system, again, is broken. Now, big people like Tyson will start repairing some of this. And if they repair it to about 50% of what it was, that'll be good up until Christmas, because the big meat eating season is in the winter, not in the summer. So if they can get through this and get their factories reorganized, there'll be plenty of workers, actually white guys, working in meat plants.
And just before we get off this entirely, a New York judge has reinstated its Democratic primaries in the midst of COVID-19, ruling that the state's decision to cancel the contest amidst the pandemic unconstitutionally deprived millions of residents the right to vote. Now, I'm all for the democratic process and would agree there are a lot of dangerous precedents already being set in the midst of the pandemic. But what do we make of this one, Ed?
Oh, I think this judge is having his say. I don't know how important this is. They'll certainly be appealed. Uh, and this was an emergency declared by the president and the like. I don't think this will have much standing. And by the time the appeal is finished, the elections will already be on. It doesn't mean much.
In other news, North Korean leader Kim Jong un has reappeared after speculations of ill health, and South Korean intelligence is claiming he was never undergoing any surgery to begin with. But it's all a bit weird, Ed. I mean, he missed the big parade being held for his grandfather's birthday, one of the biggest events in the North Korean social calendar, but then showed up at a fertilizer plant opening. And this, of course, according to North Korean state media, not what I would call the most reliable source on the media landscape. What's going on?
Are you sure that was him or someone dressed up like him? Salazar was dead for how long before we knew it? The dictator in Portugal, I think 3 years. I think we're going through a succession there. And whoever was there, it may have been old photos, whatever. I don't think this man's well enough to lead the country, or he would have been in those important prime events, not at fertilizer factories. Uh, I don't think you have to be an intelligence officer or CIA agent to know something's wrong there. And he is not well, or he is dead.
Yeah, the whole thing reminds me a little bit of Weekend at Bernie's. I don't know if you've ever caught that one, Ed. A couple of guys spend the weekend propping up their boss with various contraptions so no one realizes he's dead. We also saw shots fired over the DMZ between North and South. Glad that wasn't happening when you visited. When was it, last year, Ed?
Last year, no, I think things were relatively calm there. Um, but I stayed away. I was going up to the parallel, and I think for time constraints, I didn't get there. It's a good thing I didn't get that one on my bucket list, or I might be in the bucket.
And in Israel, Israel's top court has ruled that Netanyahu can form a new government despite facing criminal indictments in a historic decision. It appears to secure his and Israel's future for the moment, for better or for worse. What's going on?
Well, I think Netanyahu is in his 8th life of a 9 life. The next one will probably be the end of him. He's really struggling to hold on. His party's losing confidence in him. The voters are losing confidence in him. And this coalition government, I think, is a transition point. I'd be surprised if he can survive all these slings and arrows and come out all right.
Yeah, I might call my next cat Bibby if it's going to have the 9 lives, that's for sure. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG, she's back at work after a short hospital stay. Now, it's good to see Ed, but not to put too fine of a point on it. She's a woman of experience. Her health and position is being closely watched into the November election. Any thoughts?
I think Kim Il-jung and Ruth Ginsburg are facing the same thing. They're both being propped up. She's trying to struggle over this line for the nomination of the new Supreme Court judge. Let's hope she can hold on that long. If she can make it through November and Joe Biden can get out of these sex allegations and all these other things and get his act together and get a cabinet that the American people can vote for, then Ruth is safe. And I think the Senate might change in this election.
Well, this is Joe Biden is attempted to take the Tara Reid assault allegations head on this week, saying on MSNBC's Morning Joe program, "I'm saying unequivocally it never happened." The Trump campaign seems to be ramping up attacks on this one, but Trump, in a rare hesitation, even if you take in the potential hypocrisy, has sympathized with Biden, comparing the allegations to ones made against himself and Brett Kavanaugh. I don't think the comparisons will help Biden, but Trump at least appears to think they will.
I don't think he thinks they will. He's just throwing this little dirt out there in the hope that it goes off him and goes on Biden. He wants these sex allegations to be around because he knows they're going to come back at him. It's too bad the presidency of the United States is decided by this kind of trivia. Let's get on with an election. I don't know whether Mike did or did not do this. If he did it, that's bad. If he didn't do it and he stands accused and has not been able to provide the right evidence, that's bad. But we're at a very critical juncture in this country, and Joe Biden has to step up or step out.
And you did mention the cabinet a moment ago. Beyond these allegations, the big question this week is who will be Joe Biden's running mate? We're hearing the Sanders camp doesn't like Warren. Some are putting their hand up. Some are pushing for it to be a black woman. Some are questioning, does it really need to be a woman after all, guys? Look, Michelle Obama, of course, been floated, exciting a lot of people. Where are we at?
We're nowhere. I think Joe actually has a candidate. I think it's either Adams or Klobuchar, and he's waiting until that moment is right to announce it. It is too early to make such announcements. You've got to get at least into the convention or close to the convention for all that.
Well, Ed, I must say I do look forward to our chats each week on this one. It's always good to get, across what's happening over there in the States. Thanks very much for joining us again this week, mate.
Well, it's hard to be across anywhere these days, isn't it? All locked up. Hope I can get myself unlocked next week. Take care, mate.
Take care.